Welcome back. The Legal Prophet once again. We are going through Jurisprudence 1 in Uganda. So today we are going to look at what we call legal education and its relevancy in jurisprudence. First of all, you have to know what is education. As I told you earlier, education comes from a Latin word known as educare or educere, which basically means to bring out. So basically, when you go for education, you are brought out to do something better than someone who did not go for education. So in the technical sense, it is the process through which the society transmits its knowledge, skills, and values from one generation to another. So from the legal or the technical sense, it is what or the process through which the process or the society transmits its knowledge from one stage or from one generation to another. Reason being that if I study taught law today, I'll also teach it to my children. Like that, I'm transmitting knowledge. So by purposes, you have to know the purposes of education. You look at the various scholars such as Socrates, Plato, they all had to give in the different purposes or the importances of education, if you may call that. One to brings or it helps in searching for the truth, developing human beings' physical and mental qualities. So education helps in searching for truth and also develops one's physical and mental qualities. The types of education, one, formal education, you go to school. Two, informal education, you don't go to school. Then the non-formal education. So basically in Uganda, we basically know there are two, formal and informal. However, jurists have added that there is also what we call the non-formal education. So when you go to legal education in Uganda, we have to go to its history and tracing when did, as we've said, education basically is general, but now we go to legal education. We all know that legal education involves the study of the law, basically studying the law and the principles of the law. So we have to know how did legal education develop in Uganda. We begin with the year 1902. That was during the colonial period. That is, we see the reception clause, which brought all the laws of England, all the common laws, equity, and statutes of general applications, which were applied in Uganda. That is in 1902. So we are going to see that by the year 1952, there was no African or Ugandan that was authorized to study law. However, in that year 1952, they were now authorized, that is the Ugandans, to study law, and that is the African Popular Crown Law Chambers. They had to authorize Africans or Ugandans to study law. So now remember, there is no school that was teaching law at this time. So we see the first law school that was established was in the year 1968, and that was the Makerere Law School, being the first law school to teach law. However, this law school, Makerere, while teaching, was only teaching substantive law, meaning that there was no procedural law. It was only teaching substantive law. So there was need to come up with that institute that could come up with procedural law. So we see the year 1970, LDC comes in place, the Law Development Center, to teach what we call substantive law or procedural law, practical law, putting the theory into practice. That is in 1970. So we see that after the years 1968, currently there are over 12 law schools. Very many law schools have been established to help in the teaching of the law. So then after you've known that, a student of jurisprudence has to know the various stages that are used of legal education in Uganda. So the various stages of legal education were seen in the case of Pius Nwagaba, if you can recall, Pius Nwagaba versus LDC, where we see Odochi CJ, that is the Chief Justice by then, Odochi, who had to come up with the three stages of legal education, and the first was the academic stage. So the academic stage, this is where a person goes into class, sits and studies, gets the knowledge. It's what we have been on bachelors or during bachelors. There is what we call the professional stage. So the professional stage, this is where a person now goes into the profession. Maybe you finished your LDC and now you're practicing. So there are some things you learn during that professional stage. Then the continuing legal education. So that is the third stage, continuing legal education. For example, I can decide to, after I've finished LDC, let me go for masters, let me go for doctorate, PhD. All that is what we call the continuing legal education. Now, again, a student of jurisprudence has to know the legal framework on legal education in Uganda. what is that law that governs legal education in Uganda? We begin by Article 30 of the Constitution, and the case of Sharon Dimanchi versus Makerere University. Article 30 provides for right to education. Remember, I told you education is right, but we have to go for legal education. So Article 30 is the first legal framework on legalizing legal education in Uganda. So the second is what we call the University and Other Tertiary Institutions Act. So you have to acquaint yourself with the University and Other Tertiary Institutions Act. Majorly, we are going to see that this institution governs the aspect of universities. So in that provision or in that act, you have to look at section 5 subsection D, which empowers the National Council for Higher Education to consider the process of application for establishment and accreditation of private tertiary universities. So we see that it is the National Council for Higher Education, by virtue of section 5 subsection D of the University and Other Tertiary Institutions Act, that accredits university. Accreditation is like acceptance, allowing universities to teach. So again, we have to look at what we call the Advocates Act. So the Advocates Act, when we go again in legal education, section 3 subsection A, the law council shall exercise general supervision of and control over professional legal education. So by virtue of section 3A of that Advocates Act, the Law Council has the duty to supervise and control professional legal educations. And also in the same act, that is the Advocates Act, section 39 subsection B, the Law Council is given the power to approve courses of study. So it is the Law Council that approves the courses of study. Then you also look at the LDC Act, section 3 subsection 1A. The LDC has the power to organize courses that have to be taught during that aspect.